Okay. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third Wistech virtual training for 2021. Excited to have our speakers today and excited to have everyone learn some great information. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So my name is Laura Plummer and I am the statewide assistive technology program coordinator. So I oversee Wistech, which is Wisconsin's federal AT Act program, and that is through Wisconsin Department of Health Services. So that is who's hosting today's training. So a little bit of housekeeping. This is the webinar platform versus a meeting. So your videos are off and you are muted automatically. For interaction, we are encouraging you to use the Q&A sections or the chat, and both of those are located at the bottom of your Zoom app, depending on which platform you're using. We do have sign language interpreting available, and we also have closed captioning. So to access the captioning, if you want to, down at the bottom, you should have your CC button or the three dots will bring that up, and then you can enable the captioning. This training does provide continuing education units and CRC credits, which are for rehabilitation counselors. So you will get, the information will be provided in the post-webinar survey. You will need to provide some additional information if you're interested in those credits, as well as answer a couple of questions about today's training. And the survey will also include a link to the handouts that will be made available after the training. This webinar will also be archived and available on the Wistech YouTube channel. Give it about a couple weeks as we get the captioning finalized, but then it will be available to review or to share with others after today's event. So I would like to go ahead and introduce our presenters today, who are going to give us all their great knowledge about increasing access to digital spaces for those with learning differences and cognitive disabilities. So Glenda Sims is with Deque, and Jennie Delisi is with the state of Minnesota. So I will let them give a brief introduction of themselves to share what they'd like to share. But I did have the opportunity to attend this similar session earlier this year, and I knew instantly that we wanted to have their information and the way they present it shared statewide throughout Wisconsin. So welcome, Glenda and Jennie. We will let you take it away.
Awesome. Well, Laura, it is a delight to be here. Again, we're here to talk about improving access to digital spaces for those with cognitive disabilities, or as you'll soon discover, improving access for anyone with a brain. Our learning objectives are to identify 3 barriers that are encountered by people with cognitive disabilities when accessing digital information. And you'll also learn 3 ways that assistive technology can be used by those people, and 3 steps that content authors can take while writing content that will be more inclusive. So Jennie, let me let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennie Delisi, and I am the Accessibility Analyst in the state of Minnesota's Office of Accessibility. We are housed within the IT program for the state of Minnesota. And a shout out to AT Act programs. I used to work as the Assistive Technology Resource Specialist for Minnesota's AT Act program, the Minnesota STAR program, and I'm very excited to be here today. Glenda, your turn.
Awesome. So I'm Glenda, the Good Witch Sims. I work at a company by the name of Deque, and our sole purpose is to make digital accessibility a reality. I've had the good fortune to work there for 10 years. And prior to that, I worked at the University of Texas at Austin for 25 years, where I led digital accessibility. So been doing this for a little while and very, very passionate about it. I'm going to dive in because we have some wonderful content that we want to share with you. It's important that we start on the same place and figure out what is digital accessibility. So it's really quite straightforward. It's when people with disabilities can independently use their technology, equal access to all things digital. Yes, there are some other ways to define it, but this is the core. And when we think about disabilities, I always think of 5 major disability types, and I use my body to remember them. So anything related to vision, so that could be blind, low vision, color blind, anything related to hearing. It might be deaf or it might be hard of hearing. Related to speaking as a form of input, like when we talk to Alexa and Siri. Related to movement, especially when we interact with an interface. And so that would be mobility or dexterity. And then thinking or cognitive, anything related to what's happening up here in our brains. These are the 5 major types. And what we're going to do today is we're going to focus in on the cognitive disabilities. The first time I approached this in my career, it was a little overwhelming for me. Examples of cognitive disabilities can include autism, attention deficit, dyslexia, dyscalculia, intellectual disabilities, memory loss, and I'm just getting started. The list is very, very long. These are just some types of cognitive disabilities. And I remember when I was opening up this chapter of my accessibility career, feeling a bit overwhelmed. And I thought, wait a second, something's wrong here. Cognitive disabilities are very complex and personal. So maybe that's too much information for me as a digital accessibility expert to even need to know about another person. And what if, instead of thinking about people's cognitive disabilities, we focus on people's cognitive skills? And this was a major milestone for me feeling comfortable dealing with cognitive disabilities. Little secret before we go further. I'm fascinated by anything related to the brain. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. So all of this is interesting to me, but was it more complex than it needed to be? And this was the key, focusing on people's cognitive skills. So as I made this turn into thinking about cognitive skills, I ran across some lists that many of you will go, oh yeah, I know those. Attention, processing speed, short-term memory, long-term memory, logic and reasoning, language processing, math processing. And this is much easier for us to wrap our minds around, and it's really useful in coming up with solutions. So I'm going to pause here for a second and ask you a question, and I'm going to encourage you to respond in chat if you want. So think for a moment about tools that you use to help with cognitive and math processing, specifically ones that you've used in the digital space on your computer. First time Jennie asked me this question, I'm like, huh? And then she reminded me of things like Microsoft OneNote, and I see Crystal has already typed in calculator, spreadsheet application, voice assistant. So we use digital tools all the time to help us process things, whether we have a disability or not. Exactly. Google will even answer questions for us. So there are lots of things out there that help people think and process. There are also things that make it harder to process. let's look at an example site. And I'm going to tell you about this site, but I won't bring it up because it's that bad. So if you go there, don't go there if you have any sensitivity to movement or flashing, because it does both. But it's lingscars.com. And if you can see the screen right now, there are visuals, lots of them that are competing for our attention. And when I look at it, have a hard time knowing where to focus because there's so much going on. There are many different colors and different fonts. If we were on the page live, it would have moving animation, and it can cause you to actually consume it slower. So this is the opposite of what we want to do. Thinking back to how can we help people with cognitive disabilities or using digital technology and focusing on their cognitive skills, I did a little bit more reading, and I read something called Unlocking the Einstein Inside, and it inspired me to create this diagram. The cognitive skills diagram or thinking flow has two pieces to it. There's the automatic processing piece, which is the input even making it into my brain? And then there's a higher thinking piece where I'm actually manipulating the information, perhaps making a decision. In the input, that's where, did you even have my attention? Was my processing speed quick enough that I could pull it into my brain? Did it hold in my short-term memory enough for me to pass it up? This can lead to the higher thinking group. The higher thinking is accessing extra information from long-term, applying logic and reasoning, might have to unpack something with language processing or math processing, and then making a decision for what we're going to do with that information. It was this thought process that led me to realize that I no longer need to know what a person's cognitive disability is. I can understand which of these skills I can help support them with when I'm creating digital content. So with that, I want to hand it over to Jennie to talk about examples of assistive technology for reading.
Thank you, Glenda. All right. So Glenda and I talk a lot about this topic, as you can imagine. And so one of the things we talked about is this group will probably be very familiar with some types of assistive technology for reading, ones we're not even going to cover today. So we're going to go through a bunch of different ones just to set the ground level about what we're talking about, but we are aware that there are many, many others. Also, because of the variety of individuals attending today, we're going to cover ones that are both for school settings as well as work and community life settings. So there's going to be a variety of things for us to discuss. So first, these are quotes on the screen from a document that you'll get in our reference section called Content Usable. And they're information about what people with cognitive disabilities have said that they need when they're interacting with web content, for example. So the first one, I need symbols to help understand essential content. If you think about a person with a cognitive disability who maybe struggles with reading in different ways or needs more reading support, the symbols can add support to decode the text. It could be to support comprehension. And if you think about it, you probably use these too. If you think about the favorite, the star that you use when you add a bookmark, that's an example of what we're talking about, where that can support your comprehension if that is next to the word bookmark, for example. Another one is the use of white space. Some people find space between lines, sentences, and phrases can be very helpful. And again, that can support seeing where one word starts and another word stops. Those kinds of pieces or cueing that white space can give can really be essential for people with cognitive disabilities. And on this slide at the very bottom, we've stressed essential personalizations. The reason is I may like having a dog in the background image of my computer screen, for example. That's a personalization, but that's not essential to me being able to use that display. However, if the dog in the background ensures I can recognize that I am on the correct page, that becomes essential. And so today we want to clarify that whenever we use personalization, we're talking in that way. So if you can go to the next slide, we're going to move to talking about a specific assistive technology feature that is available in Microsoft Edge. And there's a great discussion going on right now on LinkedIn. What do you call it? Is it an accessibility feature? Is it built-in assistive technology? Lots of different ways to describe it. But in this way, Immersive Reader is a tool that is available within a specific Microsoft tool. So we're going to talk about it in Edge right now, but it is available in some other Microsoft applications. There's a link in your handouts where you can get more information. So the image on the left side has Edge displayed with an icon in the address bar that is a book with a speaker over top of it. That's how you know that Immersive Reader is available for that specific web page, and the tool is active. That's why the icon is blue. So beneath the address bar becomes these options that you can select. So that's read aloud, text preference, grammar tools, reading preferences. On the image on the upper right, the grammar tools options have been exposed. So the drop-down menu is available, and it gives options for things like displaying the syllables of words so you can see where they are, or color options for the parts of speech. And then on the bottom right is an example of somebody using the picture dictionary. And personally, coming from a Boardmaker background, for those of us that have used that, the Boardmaker symbols are baked into a lot of the Immersive Reader options. So when a user selects the word tools, they can choose to expose picture symbol support for reading. And in this case, the word tools displays a person using a tool, and that's the way that that reading text has been supported. This changes the way people interact with their page. So if you can think about it, if I need this information on a website, the fact that I can expose it just in time as I need it will ensure I can read the page. So as we move to the next option, we're going to contrast that with Read and Write. And Read and Write is a persistent toolbar that works across multiple applications. So I could use it in Acrobat Reader, and then I could move to Google Chrome, and then I could move to my Outlook, and the same toolbar would support me across each of those applications. And the tools will appear in the same order. They'll look and work the same. That's really important for some people with cognitive disabilities. There are dictionaries built into all kinds of applications, but the fact that the application will work exactly the same, the dictionary piece, that's important. So if I get used to using the dictionary in Read and Write, now I can apply that in multiple scenarios. The other cool tool in one of them, in the Read and Write toolbar, is there are things that can help me complete a task across multiple applications. So there are highlighters in this tool that I could use on an Outlook email, for example, that then when I press what looks like the recycle symbol, it's a colored circle on the right, it will export all of those things I've highlighted into a Microsoft Word document. And maybe I want to use that to start drafting a report, for example. So some of these tools will work interactively with multiple applications. But there's challenges to this. So if we go to the next slide, here's an idea of just where we start to hit that tipping point of complexity that makes it difficult for everyone involved in this pursuit of greater cognitive accessibility. You've got these multiple choices of assistive technologies or built-in tools. If you add to that the fact that I work in government, And in the government space, Microsoft tools don't look necessarily like they look like in the education setting. They don't look like they look in the corporate world. And so what's available to me in the government space will be different than what I might see advertised in one of those spaces. If you take that to another level and you look at these third-party applications like a read and write assistive technology, first, for that specific tool, there are multiple versions of that tool. A free version that only works in a browser, a full-featured version that might work in the browser, and then a desktop version. So now we're adding these layers of complexity. And depending where you work, is that specific tool allowed within your organization's tool set? There might be reasons like security or data privacy pieces that make certain tools allowed when other tools would be not allowed or less preferred depending on the type of work that you're doing. So then if you think about the store component of it as well, some of that being locked down, these kinds of things change what's available to us depending on the environment where we work. So that would be the same thing for a school setting as well. So you want to think through these things. And then I'm going to give you another level of detail while Glenda moves to the next screen. I'm going to add into the chat an article that will be in your handout as well, but I want to make sure that you have access to it now. Some of these tools require very specific coding, for example, in order for them to work. So for the Microsoft Edge Immersive Reader, there's code that's required for it to work with that web page. And the reason we wrote an article about it at the state of Minnesota is it took a bunch of us a lot of work to figure out why wasn't this working all the time. We wanted to learn more and then create a help guide for both our staff and who need the tool, and then our staff who support staff to use the tool. So on the screen, I've highlighted the icon with the book and the speaker. That's what you need to see to know it works with that particular web page. And if it's not there, it may not work. But there are workarounds. So if Glenda goes to the next slide, one workaround is if you just need the read aloud portion, you can access that actually in the tools connected to Microsoft Edge. Control-Shift-U or the More menu will expose the read aloud, but that doesn't have all the tools available within Immersive Reader. I think you're getting an idea here what I'm talking about in terms of complexity. So if you go to the next screen, now what we're talking about is environment partially, right? So I have it on the screen, what used to be my Office 365 app launcher, which had a limited tool set. It's got more in it now than it did at the time that I took the screenshot, but it still isn't everything available in a corporate environment, for example. So within your environment, you have to know what tools are available, what tools are allowed, and then what could be added in depending on permissioning. If you go to the next screen, now we're talking about the content level. So just like we talked about what the web developers would need to do, when we create documents, for example, we all have a piece of that puzzle putting together something that will support everyone, including people with cognitive disabilities. I imagine that everybody on this call writes an email at some point in their day, right? And an email is an example of a time where we can influence what we put out into the world and make it more cognitively accessible. But this is the same for digital documents, e-learning we put together, worksheets, forms we create, all of these kinds of things. And so we want to be sure that people learn those digital accessibility best standards, digital accessibility standards, but that we also are developing an awareness and an increased ability to follow cognitive accessibility best practices. And so I'm going to move to the next slide just to give you kind of the goal of all of this, right? Is that the person who needs the assistive technology can find it and use it and knows how to use it when we're talking about this complex world, thinking about what their needs are at that moment, how are they going to be sure that they know what's available to them and they know how it works? And if we go to the next slide, we realize we're all part of this ecosystem together, right? We've got a triangle on screen with works for all in the middle. And then around this is that ecosystem that we're all participating in. If we work in the IT department, we're making sure we select operating systems and software with accessibility in mind. Then if we're the content creator, that we're building content with accessibility in mind. And then if we're the person using the assistive technology, we also have to know what's available and how to use it. So all of us working together. So as we move into this concept of essential personalizations, Glenda and I have also been having a lot of conversations around this, because within the digital accessibility and disability community, there is a hot topic called overlays. So I want to just part the ways here so that it's clear that Glenda and I are going to split this into two sides and only talk about one side today. So the hot topic side is overlays to fix bad websites. And I don't mean bad in terms of their content, but websites that have digital accessibility issues that create barriers for people, that have known workarounds that can be fixed and applied, and that don't negatively impact other groups of users. So for example, headings. If somebody has not put headings on their page and this tool magically fixes headings, that's the kind that is a concerning type of overlay at this time. What we're talking about today is essential personalizations. And it's the idea that these little tags could be added into digital content. So I may have a preference of things displaying one way, and I can toggle something so my preferences are exposed. And then Glenda may have a different set of preferences, and it can toggle it so Glenda's get exposed. But in this way, it's not fixing anything. It's giving choices and access to those essential personalizations. So we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about it. Glenda and I are both invited experts in the W3C groups that work on digital accessibility. And there's another group within that working on this personalization piece. We put that there for people that are looking for more information on this. But what I'm going to talk about then is a little bit about how the concept one design may not work for everyone. And on the right, Glenda made us a very cool image with 3 people talking about the types of issues related to this. The person on the left says the default colors work well for me. The person in the middle says, I need white text on a dark background. And the person on the right says, I need dark text on a tan background. Each of these people have something that conflicts with the other person in terms of how the visual display will work. And that's one example that some people with cognitive disabilities may benefit from. And if we go to the next slide, we have a cool example Glenda made for us of Star Wars Day, which everybody knows, may the 4th be with you, right? And so there is a Wikipedia page about Star Wars Day displaying on the left. On the middle and right of the screen is Firefox Reader View being applied to that particular article. So the middle one is black background or dark charcoal with white text, and the one on the right has a sepia tone to it. In addition, the middle and the right examples have a tool set displaying to personalize the ability to read it for an individual. And you might notice that the pages themselves have been reordered in terms of the way the information displays on the screen. There's less information presented all at the same time. So they've reordered it so the navigation from the left side is not displaying in that initial view for the middle one and the right example. These kinds of ability to help with focus, support understanding. These are the kinds of essential personalizations we're talking about, and that we're advocating for more people to explore ways to incorporate this throughout their work. Let's go to the next slide. And so we're going to talk about making content, because many of us work in places where we influence content, but we don't necessarily develop web pages. We don't code things. But even if we're making documents and emails and checklists and supporting training materials, all of us have a role to play in making the content more accessible. So we're going to go to the next slide, but before I go through the content on this slide, I want everyone after today to take a look at your email signature. Your email signature is one of the most important places to embed some digital accessibility. You want to make sure that that content is readable, so we're avoiding things like italics in our signature. You want to make sure that it's easy to find out who sent this email and how could I contact them if I need to. This kind of thing is a great place to start on your journey towards making content more usable. But on screen, we have 3 columns in the process of making content easy to read. So the left is the checklist for planning. You want to make sure you've identified, are there dates and deadlines to highlight, tasks and background information people will need. And then you're going to move to the second column, which is design. You want to make sure you've identified how headings will be presented, the bulleted and numbered lists you could use to make it easier to visually scan content. Color is actually a great thing to use. I know people have misunderstood this over the years, and they say, well, color is not good for accessibility. Actually, it's great in certain circumstances used purposefully. So you don't want to use color alone, but you do want to make sure that you use it to draw attention where you need to. But has anybody ever seen somebody who bullets everything? If they bullet everything, where's the essential content, right? So you want to not use it too much either. And then on the right, just a reminder that we want people to test and validate that what their plan was intended to do and their design is going to meet those expectations and goals. So I like to start by showing I am working on this. We're all a work in progress, aren't we? And so here's an email I actually wrote long ago, and this was before I fixed it. So this was my first draft, right? This was before I started implementing these things right from the get-go. I was trying to fix things after. It's 3 bulky paragraphs of text. And if you visually scan through it, you have no idea what I was trying to communicate. And if you came to this later looking for a key detail that you quickly needed to find as you were scanning this email, you couldn't visually find it. So if we go to the next slide, what you're going to see is the beginning of the concepts we're talking about today. Information was broken out into sections to make it easier to find. Bulleted lists make it much easier to visually scan for information and understand how things are grouped. Also, there's key text at the beginning of some of those paragraphs, the goal, the project, which is going to give people a way to structure their thought about what I was sharing. What I could have done better is highlight either by the ordering and or necessarily bold the key point of this email, which is I need the information by noon on October 9th. By putting it at the very end, it's very difficult to find. And so this is an example of where, as I've worked on this skill over time, I've gotten better. And I'm hoping we're going to share some things today to help you get better with this same process. So Glenda is going to tell you more about how your text presentation impacts people's ability to decode your message.
Awesome. So I want to share with you some insights that I learned when I read a book called Letting Go of the Words, and that will be on our resource page at the end. And so did you know that a paragraph of text, that how you visually display it can make it easier to read and understand? I think some of these things you intuitively know, but now we're going to give you a little bit of a checklist. So on screen, I have shown the exact same content twice. One, the paragraph and line length is 140 characters wide, and two, it's 60 characters wide. If you're game in chat, tell me whether you prefer to read 140 characters wide by putting in a 1 or a 2 for 60 characters wide. So we've got somebody with 140 and we've got some more 2s and we have a combination. And it seems that in the group, and it's perfectly fine that we're not all in the same place because essential personalizations, depending on what device you're using exactly. So in studies, more people prefer the 60 character width because as you're looking, if your vision is poor, as you're looking across and then tracking back to the first line, it's longer to come back and get back to the right line for some people that have some visual problems. So again, essential personalization is important, but if you were to pick, smaller characters wide is easier on more people than wide. How about this? A paragraph and its justification. Is it better to left justify, right ragged? So that would be option 1 for you. Do you want that left straight and right ragged? Or do you really like it even on both sides? And as we look in chat, I'm seeing, again, a combination of both. People are always going to have preferences, but sure enough, in the research, they show that for many people, reading is easier with left justified, right ragged. Why is it easier for most people that way? Because there is consistent spacing between words on the left justified, right ragged. Over on the right-hand side, your brain has to work a little bit harder because there's inconsistent spacing in between words to get that even on both sides. Let's look at another one. I am wicked about this one. Which do you prefer? Left justified, right ragged, or centered? So let's see, lots of ones. And sure enough, we're getting, I think I haven't seen a single thing but a 1. And you're right, research has shown that for people with any cognitive overload going on, that they're going to prefer the left justified and right ragged. Why is that? It's easier to, as you're reaching the end of the line, go back to a consistent space. Reaching the end of the line, go back to a consistent space. It makes it less hard on your brain, the left justified straight versus that centered. Glenda has stopped centering as much since Jenny and I have been presenting this material. How about this one? I think this one we're going to get pretty clear results. A paragraph and what case you use. Are you going to use mixed case on your letters, or are you going to use uppercase? And many of you are saying that you prefer mixed. We've got someone that prefers uppercase. And I'll tell you that for the majority of people reading your content, not all, but the majority, mixed case is going to be easier to read. What's the science underneath that? Many times we're not actually reading letter, 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 and then composing the word in our head. We're looking at the word shape. And there's a more distinct word shape when you're in mixed case. when you're in all uppercase, it's very blocky and your brain has to work harder to decipher the word. So that's why there's a strong preference. And many people often say to me, uppercase is yelling. So there is also the connotation that it might be perceived as yelling. So we just talked about some of the ways that you can make your text more readable for most people based on how you lay it out. What about the font? Okay, there is no one perfect font. There is no one size fits all font. The best font for you is something you can actually start to go research. There's a place called readabilitylab.xyz where you can go through a process of reading content with different fonts, and it's going to help you discover what your best font is for reading and comprehension out of the ones that they've given you options for, and which one you visually prefer. And what's really surprising is your favorite font visually is rarely the font you actually read best in. And so when I did this research on myself, my favorite was Helvetica. I thought it looked pretty. And I even liked Roboto a lot. Neither of those were the one I read fastest with the most comprehension. Noto Sans, which I'd never heard of before or used before, was the one that I read better with. How much better? 316 words per minute with Noto Sans versus 238 words per minute with Roboto. Really significant stuff. So to say you're not going to pick the perfect font for everyone, but allow that personalization so that if a person knows what font they read best in, they can select it themselves. There are ways to be able to choose font. We've documented that. In Firefox and Edge, it's just in the browser. They can pick the font. If you're in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, you get to pick your font. In Chrome, there's a font changer. So these are just some examples of ways for personalization related to font. So if you're dying to know a few recommended fonts from readability experts, again, there is no one size fits all, but in the research that I've done, I found that Avant-Garde, Avenir Next, Montserrat, and Noto Sans are all fonts that are recommended by readability experts. Research continues to be done on that. And if I'm correct, Jenny and I chose Montserrat for this presentation. Why? Because it was on the short list here, and it was the one that was in this tool. So what we just learned is a paragraph of text is easier to read for most people when it has a shorter line length, and let the reader control the line length, because shorter isn't perfect for everybody. Left justified and right ragged is easier. Mixed case, and let that reader control the font. So further emphasizing essential personalizations. There's another thing that Jenny has alluded to, and that is not just text, but text supported with images. Adding images to reinforce the concepts makes content easier to understand. It's two different modes. And so, for example, a text describing a guitar chord, if I were to look at this, the text is nice for the A major guitar chord, but I'm going to prefer the image. You never know who's going to prefer which. So putting both there is ideal when possible. Guitar chord is my first example. A table and a chart. I really like the visualization of a chart. Here we have a chart for best household materials for a mask. And I see things better by looking at the graphic display, but it's really nice to be able to look at the table as well. So you don't have to go one or the other, use both. how about this one for you if you're getting instructions on how to do something on a computer? Do you want it in words? Do you want pictures? Or do you want both? I absolutely want both. Here I have an example of how to use Google Translate with steps 1, 2, and 3 highlighted on the image of Google Translate, making it much easier to see and understand what needs to be done. And last but not least, this is something we run into all the time. When you think about navigation and you're designing something for a system, which option is preferred by you and by others? Do you want to pick from the hamburger menu with the 3 lines? And Danette says, words, please, not just the hamburger with 3 lines. And the third option is both the 3 lines and the word menu. And we think about some of our populations, they might not even understand what the 3 lines mean. And so which option is best for cognitive usability? It is often to have both available, but again, personalization. Maybe they just want the words. Maybe they just want the symbol. There's a image I've taken down here from disabilityinfo.org. If you want to look at a fabulous site that is written for people with intellectual disabilities, they make an A+ on creating independence for people with intellectual disabilities. Absolutely fabulous site. So Jennie, over to you to tell us about some cool tools for writing clearly.
Well, first, a confession. So sometimes in these interfaces, we have so much going on, it's hard to notice all the details. And a perfect example is when I popped the link for the article into chat, I had only sent it to Laura as a private message and neglected to notice that it hadn't gone to everyone. So I've just corrected that. It's in the chat right now for you. So it's a great time to have a learning example of when there's too much visual display on the screen, you can miss details, and the ability to focus really can help a lot of us, me included. So yes, now we're going to go on to 3 cool tools, and I want to tell you I love tools. Each tool we're going to talk about today is only a piece of the puzzle, and we are hopeful that more tools are being developed today and will continue to be added because there's limitations to each of the tools we're going to talk about. So we're going to go to the next slide and start with the one that we found was most accessible for individuals with disabilities that want to work on measuring cognitive accessibility of their content. So this is Microsoft's readability statistics that you can use in Microsoft Word. We'll have a link in the handouts for instructions on how to get it added. I use this all the time. It runs every time you run your spell checker. So on the left, we have the results screen that you get after you run the checker that goes through the readability statistics. And I am specifically interested when I'm running it in a couple of different things. The words per sentence is a big one. That's an indicator of how complex the topic is. I'm also looking at the Flesch-Kincaid grade level because it's not a perfect indicator, but it's certainly going to give you an idea of how complex is this for individuals to understand. And then the bottom one I'm looking at is the passive sentences, the percentage of that, because passive sentences make it difficult for people to decode and understand what you're trying to tell them. On the right is the word options, which is the way that you set this up for yourself. You go on the proofing tab, and then there are 2 checkboxes that you'll have to select. Check grammar with spelling, show readability statistics. Before we move off this slide, what I want to share is that for individuals that use screen readers and want to set this up for themselves, when the readability statistics come up, Microsoft was kind enough to share what a screen reader user needs to do to get access to that window. So I just want to remind people to use the virtualized window by going Insert + Alt + W and that will load all the text into the virtual buffer so you can have access to those stats. This is the most accessible tool that we found so far, and so we just want to make sure everybody can use it. All right, next slide. So now this tool is dual purpose, which is one of my favorite kinds of things because it can be both a tool for those of us creating content, but it's also a tool for people who have difficulty decoding from information. What's the tone of the people who wrote this? What are they trying to tell me that may not be clear from the way the text is written? The tool is called the IBM Watson Tone Analyzer. And I'm going to go through a few slides to let you see how this works. On the left is a tweet Glenda sent in October, and she's sharing an article and she put a small paragraph of text. So I copied that text and I put it into the Tone Analyzer text box. And then above the text box is a radio button for tweets. And I have a screenshot on the right there. Beneath the text box will be the Analyze button, and that's the one that you select to get this moving. And so we'll go to the next slide. And this is a tool that does have some digital accessibility barriers at the time that we did do the testing. So this tool won't work for everyone, but there are some components that are helpful for those that are able to use it. On the screen is now 3 screenshots for each of the sections of the results that get reported. On the left is the analytical tone, and Glenda's tweet got a score of 0.75, and it's highlighting the text in a blue color to identify that's the one they're talking about in the analysis. She said, "I love when hashtag A11Y and universal design amplify each other." It picked that up as analytical. Now remember, this is artificial intelligence, so what it's reflecting back is what it's programmed to do. So there's all kinds of bias that could be in here based on how it was programmed to score. On the right, on the top, is the Joy tab, which it's very good to do Glenda things in Joy because she has lots of joy. She scored 0.75 here for I love, right? That portion of it. I love when accessibility and universal design amplify each other. And the bottom right one is the tentative score, and it's highlighting 2 sentences. The first one, was it possible? And the bottom one, Chris lost his vision and became even better at his job. So it's curious why some of those results come back. It doesn't necessarily decode that for us, but it gives us an idea, a starting place to look at how we are forming our content. All right, we're going to go to the next tool, which is Hemingway app. And this is the tool that both Glenda and I use regularly. So I'll give you the link in a moment. Hemingway with 1 M, just to be clear, Hemingway app. It gives a readability score, information about each sentence, and identifies the use of passive voice and adverbs. So on the screen, what we have a screenshot of is the tool using the web browser version. That's the version that I use most frequently. There are some known accessibility issues with this tool as well. So just want to put that out there. The reason I use this tool is I use it while I'm editing to get instant feedback or while I'm crafting my message. On the right of the screenshot, there's a grade level for their default text that they have displaying, which is grade 6. And then beneath it is the color code key basically for how they're scoring your information. It sometimes tells the number of instances, but then gives you an idea. So when you look at the main content area, you can see where this is being applied and scored for your specific content. So let's go to the next slide. And what you're going to see is what I did when I used to do this a long time ago when I started. So this is a sample of text written from our November newsletter last year. And this is when I used to write it and then try to fix it, which I don't advocate for at all. It's very difficult to do. And this scored grade 15. Oh my goodness, that's so complex. And there's a lot of sentences in the main area that are listed as hard to read, a couple of passive voice items that have been caught. So this is an example of what not to do. So let's go to the next slide. I got a little smarter, thank goodness, as I aged a little bit and practiced. So for the June newsletter, I started actually drafting right within the tool so I could get that instant feedback. And so this one got a lower grade score of grade 8 with fewer hard to read sentences and no instances of passive voice. There's still some hard to read and some identified as very hard to read within here. It's never going to be perfect, and this isn't an exact science. There are times where you're going to have hard to read sentences. Perfect example, the word accessibility. It automatically flags things and ups the score. And so it's true, we have to be cautious when we use this word, how often, how frequent, but also know that people will know certain vocabulary depending on your audience and the location where you're posting this information. That does make a difference. So grade level is just one bit of input about what makes something easier to read or harder to read. So we're going to go to the next slide, and we'll confess that we always plan a hands-on activity when we have this much time, but we don't know if we're going to be able to do it today. So we're going to walk you through what we might do and then skip around to the next section of our presentation. If we have time, we'll come back and work on an activity together.
Yeah.
But you can do this on your own for homework if we don't get to it today. So let's go to the next slide. Hemingwayapp.com is where you find this tool, Hemingway with one M, and you're going to select all of the text in that main body section, which on the screenshot starts with Hemingway app makes your writing bold and clear. You're going to select all the text from there all the way through the bottom sentence, write button and compose something new, and then you're going to delete that. That's the area where you draft. And then as you keep going, you're going to start to see your score on your right that's going to adjust based on what you wrote. You can write something on your own, or you can use text that Glenda prepared ahead of time at glendathegood.com/ATIA.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You're fine. Because if we come back to it, we will show this slide again. Not to worry if you didn't get it.
And Jenny, I'm looking at our time, and I think we actually have time to stop now for this activity. Double check me on our timings, but I think we actually have it.
Yeah, I agree. So if you want to start walking through, get the glendathegood.com up and running.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually post this in chat for everyone and have you go to Hemingway editor. And as you're headed there, anybody already familiar with this tool and in love with it, because I don't know what I'd do without it. I'm going to go to the tool. Let me get this little piece. I'm going to move my imagery over here. So here I am in the tool. And the first question that I want to ask is, Jenny, when you're writing an article, what grade level do you like to shoot for?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so oftentimes, one of the considerations for me is how technical is the article? So if it's a general article talking about the story behind a project, let's say, I'm looking anywhere between grade 5 and grade 8 or grade 9 as what I'm shooting for. When I write a technical article with a lot of technical terms, I know that that's artificially going to inflate the reading level in some ways. It's artificial in that the people who read that article may be more familiar with that terminology. At that point, I might be a little more comfortable with a 9 or a 10, but again, I'm going to watch in Hemingway for what does get flagged as hard to read or very hard to read.
Yeah.
And if it's not because of the technical terminology, I'm going to use the tool to help me lower those sections. How about you, Glenda?
So what was fascinating for me, Denise in chat has said she's usually shooting for an 8th grade level for consumers. And, you know, when I first started using this, I'm a college graduate and I worked at UT, University of Texas, for 25 years. And so I would have thought, why do I have to write below grade 12? You know, can I go for grade 14? That should be perfectly fine. You know, my population is educated. And as I started to do this and started to use it, it reminded me of what we were talking about in even like the text section. It's like, how much overhead do we really need? And by aiming for 8th grade, or sometimes I aim even lower, I am not dumbing down my article. But what I'm doing is I'm actually taking time to make it easy to read. I won't drop important content. It's harder to write clear and simple. And so Hemingway brought me into this. And one of the articles that I wrote, it was for a major K through 12 education provider. It's a .com that provides things through K through 12. And I was writing, what do you do when you have an Office of Civil Rights complaint about accessibility in your K through 12 environment? Very stressful moment for a person. Well, think about being under stress. You've just received a legal complaint, and now you need to figure out what to do. You don't have a cognitive disability, but that stress is affecting your mental processing. The more clearly I can write, the better and easier it is for them to read that in a stressful moment. And so I often aim for grade 6 or grade 8.
Yeah, do you know another place where I use it, Glenda, is there are certain individuals I need to send emails to who are often very pressed for time. And so the easier I can make it for them to quickly visually scan the email, let's say before they jump into a meeting, the more likely I will get them to complete a task or respond, if that makes sense. Yes. And so the same principles apply in lots of business cases as well. So in no way is this only related to articles for those that are following along, or long bits of text. It does apply to short communications as well. Clear and concise, Denise says, and absolutely. But I would add to that structured. And you're going to see Glenda applying some of those structure pieces to lower the grade level on what she's displaying on the screen.
And so, and I want to emphasize what you just said, Jenny. The subject of my email and the too long didn't read version at the top is like an executive summary of what's the point and what's the action that I'm needed. Make all the difference in the world in me getting somebody above me to respond in the way I'm hoping they'll respond.
So Glenda's pasted into the main content area some of the text from that web page she gave the link for.
And there's a site called News and Levels, and I think it's a fun place to start if you don't have something that you're currently working on, because what it does is it writes the same article in 3 different levels. And rather than go out to the site, because it's got a lot of advertising on it, that's kind of annoying and flashing sometimes, I have the level 3 version of the article for chocolate 3D printing, and the level 1 article. So I grab grabbed the level 3. And as we're looking at this, it feels like a game to me too. I want to get rid of the red. So I see a Belgian chocolate company is now using 3D printers, which allows the company to create more intricate, difficult to mold chocolates. And what I know from having done this a lot is that these long sentences are hard to follow. And so if you just put a period right there, the company creates or they create more intricate, let's see, more detailed, let's just say detailed, because we even have like a cheat down here. Intricate means detailed chocolates. The chocolates are for people who seek original designs. People who want original chocolate designs will like these. And that sentence is gone. So it's fun. And Jenny, you say you are actually using Hemingway up front when you're composing. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. Because for me, it's easier as I'm drafting to do some of those edits that change the passive voice or change the length of sentences before I've committed too much content, if you will.
And I, in a vote for each person does it differently, I function the other way. I want to let the writing flow. And so I'll go into a place and just write. And then I'll come in here, I'll copy it and paste it in, and then I'll edit. And my goal is I'll have a readability grade level that I'm shooting for, somewhere between 6 and 8. And you know what? I want it to be all white. I will. I won't force myself to do it. If I'm not going to spend 2 hours recrafting a sentence. And the other thing is I'll excuse readability for long words. And a friend of ours, John Rochford, what he is doing is he's researching the same kind of thing. And when he's doing readability scores, there are certain words that you're allowed to pull out pre-testing for readability. So if my last name was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, you wouldn't get a negative hit for my name. You'd be able to pull it out, get your readability score, and put it back in.
Well, this is where also your drafting process is really important. So for some people that are going to start to really be focusing on this skill, sometimes starting from an outline as opposed to drafting in full sentences, if that's what you're able to do, that outline can be that middle step before you move to your work within a tool like Hemingway. Because you've got those ideas out on paper or digital spaces, and then you're able to craft them into sentences that will work depending on the readability level you're looking at. But again, readability is just one component of it. And so just as a reminder to people, because many people in the cognitive accessibility space don't want people solely thinking about reading score as their way to measure if something is going to be cognitively accessible.
Very true, very true. And as soon as I find my mouse, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jenny, if you're ready to talk about how much time it'll take to master.
I am. So like Glenda and I are both sharing, we want to be very transparent here. First, we're not experts at this. This is a skill that you improve on over time, like everything else. So how much time you implement every day to practice. If you've ever done something like learn the piano or learn knitting, Glenda found an awesome Udemy study that said it takes 5,760 hours to master knitting and 13,000 hours to master culinary arts. And so we want you to have that spirit in mind that you're going to learn little bits of it and keep going. So you want to start with some goals in mind. Set a goal, make a time to practice, support your learning with webinars and buddies, because a buddy can always help, right? And set a time to measure your progress. So just like I was able to take an article from 6 months ago, compare it to an article that's later in time, that's going to give you some confidence as you're building that skill. And I see we have a question from Denise. Does this tool measure the ability for readability with tools that read out loud for the blind? So we're talking about a different kind of readability here. And so I really appreciate you asking that question, Denise. When we talk about readability in the cognitive space, we're talking about how easy is it for a person's brain to take the information as text and decode it to move it from I am able to read each of the vocabulary words on the screen to I'm able to understand the context the person is trying to describe and communicate to me. And then I'd be able to take an action if I need to take an action. Whereas there are tools that measure if a screen reading software will be effective in communicating what's on the page to the person that is listening to the text on the page. And that's what we often refer to as certain types of digital accessibility testing tools. And there are many different examples. Glenda, do you have a particular tool that you could recommend for testing in that way?
So for the cognitive load of comprehending the content, I still think readability, and this is my interpretation, that the readability will have some impact on the screen reader user as well. The heavier the text, the longer the sentences, the more passive voice, the more things you have to hold in your brain to get the concept.
That's
and so
point.
I do think that there's going to be a match. There's a whole nother piece entirely of, can the screen reader even access the text? Is it a picture of text? At which point the screen reader can't access it at all. And so there are lots of other tools, but I think Denise is thinking, is this readability also going to help a screen reader user that's listening?
Okay.
And I do think it definitely would. And I wanted to make one more comment on that. How many times do you remember in your highest level of education reading content that was at that level? So you're reading very heavy scientific content, or for me it was psychology content. Is your brain really ready to read at that grade level? Have you had enough sleep that night? Have you, do you have a headache? Are you hungry? Have you been in a Zoom meeting for over an hour? There are all kinds of things that just because you're at a grade level in education doesn't mean the content, you even want to read the content at that level. And one of my favorite stories, there's a wonderful, wonderful woman by the name of Whitney Quisenberry. She's a usability expert. She's done amazing work in the field of making voting more clear for people. And she once worked on a project where they were creating a portal for medical information, and they were creating it for patients. And so the reading level for the patients was going to be probably at an 8th grade level. And the doctors, oh my, The doctor's portal version could never be at 8th grade because they're doctors. And so this is going to be at 14 or 16 or higher, right? So they did it and they created the portal, and the information was at 2 different levels. And the patients were very, very happy with the content because it had been well designed, easy to read, not overly unnecessarily complex. Guess which portal the doctors used more? They did.
Well, and to add to the earlier question that Denise had, I want to add another layer to the conversation, which is we all age and life experiences happen to all of us. And so for an individual who is blind, they may experience other cognitive changes that happen over lifetimes. And so to remember that a person may not be born with a cognitive need in this way, but they may, life experience may bring that need to their life. And so they could experience a stroke and have cognitive differences because of it. They could be on medications that impact their ability to focus. They could be experiencing certain mental health challenges in their day, and it could be an episode or it could be a new thing that they're experiencing as part of their life that is impacting their ability to process information, for example, in the same way that maybe they could before. So just to understand that all of us are going to change in our abilities at different times. Some may qualify for a new disability type as a part of this. And so that could also impact this need that Denise is talking about as well.
So Jennie, are you ready to get meta
Oh.
and talk about strategies for making cognitive accessibility happen in digital spaces like Zoom?
Yeah, so this is out of a conversation that Glenda and I had as we prepared, ironically, for the session that Laura saw at another conference. It was around the time that some of the webinar platforms enabled a new feature called, well, it doesn't matter what it was called, but it was basically drop your attendees into breakout rooms without them choosing to move into one. And I went, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not going to do that. And Glenda and I started having a conversation about what kinds of cognitive issues happen if I don't have choice about moving from one space to another, let alone all the other issues that all of you have been sharing, like if a person is blind, how will they know? All of these pieces. Let's put those aside just for the second. But if you can imagine, if you were physically at a conference and all of a sudden the winds start blowing and now you're dropped into a different conference room and you're expected to talk, whereas before you'd been expected to listen, this is what we started talking about, is how can we help people understand the cognitive impact of choices around how we use digital spaces. And we're going to ask you to imagine, as you're going through, the different kinds of cognitive spaces you inhabit, in addition to webinars or meetings like we're in right now, but also how you use chat and when and why, how you might use a game situation if you're an online gamer, how you might be participating in video calls with family and friends, all of those pieces. Yeah, Rochelle says you can definitely notice a drop off of attendees when you get the surprise breakout room. I can tell you, I am that person that will drop off. So what we moved to is we wanted to break this out into a spectrum of need in terms of interactions in a digital space. We're starting with quiet. And the reason we're starting with quiet and calling it quiet is Glenda and I talked a lot about the word passive participation, which I do not like. And the reason is passive can have a judgment component to how we're interpreting how that person might be participating. And we want to start from a place of quiet as need. I need to be quiet. Okay. So the left side of the table is displaying, and as we progress, you'll see more columns. But this one is 3 areas we want to highlight. One is people who do better with listening and absorbing. And some people have historically thought about these people as introverts, but introverts may just have a preference for it. We're talking about people who need this in order to do their best in a situation from a disability standpoint. For others, this could be a safety reason that they need to stay quiet. I don't feel safe sharing in a space like this. This space, I will only be listening. It could be people who need time to think before responding. Their cognitive abilities may be best served if they do one thing at a time. Right now I'm listening, and later I'm going to do the responding. And then there's another group of people who need time to prepare a response. So some individuals that use augmentative and alternative communication tools like an AAC device, while they may be able to prepare a message and share it during a virtual engagement session, it may not be the best way for them to communicate with you in that way. And so that individual may prefer, and again, everyone is different, but some individuals will prefer just to listen and respond later. We're going to go to the middle section now. And this part of the table, so we put the other piece away for now, so you could just focus on this portion. Quiet to active. So people who can move from quiet to active, but need to be able to do that shift purposefully, and oftentimes need to control when that shift occurs. So we've divided this into 3 areas again, and we're going to talk about it from the terms of comfort, safety, and preparation time. So for comfort, some individuals want to confirm that they have understood the instructions and the parameters of the instructions before they participate. And I have an example. I often attend meetings where people who are well-meaning extroverts say, we are now going to do introductions. Everyone's going to say their name. And when you share your name, share your favorite summertime activity, which is a very seemingly simple activity, not asking for a lot. But some individuals with cognitive differences immediately will have a lot of questions and concerns about this phrase, summertime activity. It could be things like, are they asking for a fact or a story? And some of that is about the length of time I'm going to be expected to talk, right? Other people might be worried about, is this story or fact I want to share appropriate for this setting? Right? Because maybe everybody's going to end up sharing work stories of things they like to do at work in summertime. And if I went first, maybe I would share something that I like to do with my friends on a Friday night after work hours. And maybe that wasn't the appropriate thing to share in this setting, right? Other people find hearing what the other people are sharing is going to help them feel comfortable as they move forward and it's their turn. Another group wants safety. They want to be sure that what they're going to share is going to be well received and they will be safe. And so sometimes hearing other people share first will assure them that what they have to share will be welcomed. And then again, that group that needs preparation time. Some people need time to draft what they're going to share, or they need other ways, time to process what they're going to share. So that preparation time can be very helpful for them as well. Now we're going to move to another group that again, Glenda and I have a lot of conversation about, because people assume that everybody that is considered an active participant, who love active participation, that it's just their preference, right? Not essential. But we're talking about the individuals who need to actively participate in order to be engaged and learn their best. And so that's a different group of people. They need this, what we're talking about. So I don't know if you noticed, but Glenda and I set up our participation today with all different kinds of engagement peppered throughout the session. And one of the reasons is to make sure we meet those individuals where they need to be met. If you needed to put your question in right away, but we didn't have a time that it was appropriate for you to speak it or share it right away and have it addressed, you at least could put it in the chat, and then between Laura and Glenda and I, we'll pick up that question at the end for the Q&A. That's an example of satisfying for some individuals that need to do it right away, but then have it appropriate in terms of how we'll handle it. For some individuals, requiring them to listen and not participate actively will cause them extra cognitive work. Just like what we were talking about earlier, some individuals need quiet listening opportunities. And if you ask them to actively participate, that will cause them cognitive work. So it's this kind of balance where lots of people have different needs. And then there's individuals with memory loss issues who may need to share something before they forget. And individuals who experience distraction, that's another group that may need to share as soon as it comes top of mind in a way that can be accessed later. Let's move to the next slide. And what we show is this whole spectrum. So all of these group members have value in what they want to share with you, and they need to have ways to participate as best as they can in these digital spaces, regardless of the type of digital space. But we want to make sure that we've presented a new way to look at it, and to help with that, Glenda's going to talk about some strategies for engagement.
So what's really valuable is to set expectations in advance for engagement, because some participants really want to have an idea of, what do I need to be ready for in this meeting? How are you going to ask me to engage? With that clear role and expectation, a person that needed that safety or comfort or that prep time might be able to be more active quickly. And the other thing is how important it is for the engagement to be optional. And if it weren't for Jennie, we would have had forced breakout rooms. But thanks to Jennie, we didn't, because she's like, Glenda, that's forcing a situation. And it's not good. And it was a light bulb moment for me. I'd never thought of it before. She's taught me so many things. And that optional engagement, the polls, the structured chat, which we had earlier, where it was simple to respond to different things. Some of you wrote in your words, others would just put a 1 or a 2. And Jennie taught me that not only is this useful in any environment, but specifically for an AAC user, where composing that answer when it's words long on the fly is a distraction from what's continuing, because we're not silent while we wait, for all of these responses. And so she's taught me so many things about not only it being optional, but letting people know in advance. And those opportunities to speak and turn on video, that don't force it. And I can't wait to go teach this to some other people I hang out with who think that quiet is not engaged. So that to me was a learning moment. And I'm so grateful to you, Jennie, for teaching me. Did you want to say anything more about strategies before I switch topics to content warnings?
No, I think that's great. I'm excited for you to share the next part because it's so important.
Yeah. So this might come as a surprise to some of you. It certainly came as a surprise to me. I'm aware when I watch television or a movie that some content may have a negative impact on people. I'm real sensitive to certain type of things and will avoid that kind of media. And when we think about the accessibility space for people with disabilities, there's some real common ones like flashing. If something flashes at the wrong rate, it can literally cause an epileptic seizure. It can cause a migraine. This is well known in the digital accessibility industry. There are tools for measuring this. And many of us may be aware that movement can cause dizziness and migraines and other things. There's no rule in the digital accessibility world that movement is not allowed, but I remember, I can't remember what year it was, but Apple had done a design of how their apps opened and closed. And they had created so much movement in that interaction that people were getting dizzy and they had to change it. And here comes the next one. These sensitive subjects that can cause stress, upset, or even something as significant as a post-traumatic stress trauma reaction. Okay, I'm in the business world. It's between 8 and 5. I'm just talking about my job stuff. What do content warnings have to do with it? I'm not going to talk about things I shouldn't talk about. Oh, yeah? So the company that I work for, Deque, we threw a little conference earlier this year. It was called AXCon, Accessibility Conference is what that stands for, 2021. It was a 2-day online conference. We had a few folk, 17,000 plus attendees. We had over 100 speakers. We're in the middle of this event, and I'm getting a complaint that 2 of our sessions have content that needs content warnings. And I'm having these words like, these need trigger warnings, these need content warnings. And the 2 sessions, they're actually linked here. If you want to learn more about them, one of them is Making Motion Inclusive by the amazing Val Head, leader in the field. It's a great presentation. And the second one is Be the Villain by Eric Bailey, a brilliant expert. And I'm looking at the 2 sessions. I haven't seen any of them, either of them. And my initial response is, why do I need a content warning? The Making Motion Inclusive, it's in the title. Of course, there's going to be motion in the session. And Val does an excellent job. She says at the beginning that there's going to be motion. She tells you if you're motion sensitive, when to close your eyes, when you can open them. I'm like, why do we need a content warning on the outside of this? And Eric Bailey, Be the Villain. I'm like, what's going on in there? Okay, so I then scold myself and I use my middle name. Glenda Sims, watch both sessions in full before you make any more comments, even to yourself. I watch both sessions. I watch Eric's first because that's where I'm told there are PTSD trauma warnings. And I go, oh, both sessions need content warnings. And what I realized is Eric also did an excellent job. He did an excellent job of letting people know in advance that there was content that might cause some people stress. He gave them an opportunity to leave. But what happened if you were 10 minutes late and you didn't get the content warning? He didn't do it over and over and over and over. And I'm like, oh my. His session was profound. It was incredibly meaningful. And I'm not going to talk today about exactly what the content warnings are, because I don't want a content warning in the content warning section. But I will tell you that after I researched all of this, I realized that without a doubt, I needed to add a content warning. And when you now go to see even the description of Eric's session, there's a content warning on the title of the page. There's a content warning in the header section, the words content warning. You will be hard pressed to not know what you're getting into. And as I thought about this and dove deep, one person had suggested to me, there's no way you can have a list of all things that need to have a content warning. And I went, I got 100 speakers and 17,000 humans showing up. If I don't have a list, how am I ever going to get on top of this? So I did a lot of research, and I'll give you a clue. What inspired me the most? I started with TV ratings and film ratings, and I ended up with video game ratings. It's a fabulous list. It was well thought out. So if you want to read more about that, I've documented it in detail in the content warning session. Yes, there'll be some words there that could be triggers. Strategy is, in my mind, I'm not going to get overly concerned about whether it's a content warning or a trigger warning. A content warning may be upsetting. A trigger warning may actually trigger post-traumatic stress. For me, it's just a warning about the content. I may be wrong on that, but that's what I'm choosing. It's easier for me to just call it all content warning. I've defined what content needs warnings within my org and our conference. I can then tell all speakers in advance about the warning requirements. Yo, Jennie, don't talk about these things unless you're going to warn. Then she, as a speaker, doesn't fall into a content warning or a trigger warning problem. Provide written warning before the event begins, because knowing is everything. What was fascinating is when I first learned about this, I thought the whole intent was protect the person from ever being exposed, when in reality, it was choice. And the most profound statement that was said to me was, knowing is everything. Does the person want to stay in the session? If they know, they can put their shields up, and they can, but they don't want to be surprised by that content. Verbal warnings during the event, always giving attendees enough time to step away or mentally prepare for the content. So, been in the biz for over 20 years. First time I had to deal with content warnings, and I'm grateful for the opportunity and the person that brought it to my attention. And for the fact that I didn't just blow it off and think, oh, you were too sensitive, because it's really important. In addition to content warnings, which can cause you think about the cognitive overload that goes into something like that, let's talk about something simpler, like distractions. Needed input for some can be a barrier for others. Jennie has described this to us very well. A person that needs active participation to stay mentally engaged needs that chat. But this quiet person, don't force the chat. Same thing with the polls. I attend a talk once a week. I have to, in that environment, I am trying to focus on what the speaker is saying. When that chat is rolling and those emoticons are rolling, I can't pay attention to the speaker. I have to turn them off. And so it can depend on the topic or the event. It's not a constant. As Jennie and I were talking about distractions, we've got video going. And we even asked before, is it okay if we have video going? I'm Italian. Jennie, you're Italian too, right? I talk with my hands. Is that movement distracting, or is it engaging? It depends on the person. Let them turn it off or on. sign language interpretation is going on too. If you couldn't close that window, if you didn't need it and it was distracting, that would be a problem. The audio noises, have you ever been in a large meeting where every entrance and exit makes a sound? It's horrible if you can't turn that off. So there are lots of things that can cause distractions. Make sure people can tune for that. We've talked about effective use of chat. Chats can be very useful for some, incredibly distracting for others. Let me tell you that a screen reader user may lose it if they can't turn that chat off. They're trying to listen to the presenter. Every time one of us tells a joke in chat or networks or giggles, their screen reader speaks over the speaker of the event. So very important for this to be optional, and for you to decide the purpose of it so that you can have more people who want to be engaged. Understand what the parameters are. Is it for asking questions? Is it for sharing resources? Is it for kidding around? Plan how you're going to use it and then communicate that clearly to everyone prior to the meeting, at the beginning, and remind people if it's causing any problems. And then I loved how Laura at the beginning of the session helped support anybody that might not remember how to do something in the meeting interface. She described the location of the features, how we were going to be using the chat. She didn't just depend on everybody knowing. And so whether it's a memory issue or it's just regular. We're in so many Zoom meetings. What's the rules here in this room? So providing the successful instructions for successful participation, and doing a quick tour of features. One of my trainers has that built into the training with pictures of exactly what they're doing. And then private reminders or help. So these are strategies for creating positive experiences for anybody with a brain in cognitive spaces, including things that aren't just making it helpful for those of us that don't have a cognitive disability, but literally removing barriers for some people with cognitive disabilities. And as we wrap towards the end, I want to talk about the work that a number of people are doing to improve the digital accessibility rules. As I mentioned, I've been in the field for over 20 years. And at the beginning, when I talked about the disability types of blindness and hearing and motor and speech, so much work has gone into making the rules for making sure people with visual disabilities, hearing disabilities, and motor disabilities have equal access. And cognitive has been there all along, and yet the needs aren't fully met. So there's a group of rules. They're called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And Jenny, if you could type that into chat just so that WCAG is decoded in chat.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. The WCAG guidelines first came into being in 1999. 1.0, and these are the digital accessibility rules that my organization tests for, and they're the international accepted standard for measurement. And WCAG 2.0 in 2008 brought in a little bit of cognitive support. And WCAG 2.1 in 2018 had more mention of needs for people with cognitive disabilities, but we know there are just huge gaps still there. And this continues, and we have a future of WCAG 3.0 where we do expect the needs for people with cognitive disabilities to be even better met. And so this is a process. And we wanted to let you know that this is a really fun process. And here on screen is a photo from when Jennie and I attended a cognitive and learning disabilities task force that is by this group of people that are creating the digital standard for the future. So if you have any interest of becoming involved with this, know that this group of people is working to help write research summaries and to make recommendations for making content usable for people with cognitive and learning disabilities and mental health disabilities. They're gathering feedback from the community, and they're working with the personalization group, because how many times have Jennie and I said, what each person needs, it's not going to be a one size fits all. And so here's Jennie on the right in red, and here I am on the left with many of our dear friends, and we can help you into this group. So within this group, fabulous things are coming, and in the recommended resources, you'll see valuable links to an introductory guide to cognitive disabilities, as well as Gareth Ford's recent article on ADHD and dyslexia. I mentioned Letting Go of the Words by Jennie Reddish. Oh, that first one's an article by us. And then the third bullet is the wonderful, it's like an encyclopedia document of many of the learnings of the W3C. So with this resources slide, Jennie, do we want to open it up for questions now?
We do. I'm just going to take a moment because I know sometimes we forget to go back to the resources section. I'm just going to make sure that I share the link for the State of Minnesota's Office of Accessibility newsletter.
Awesome.
This is a free subscription, and we often post a lot of the information that's covered here today, for example. So we want to make sure that more people are connecting with that kind of information. Glenda's blog, I posted the link for it in the chat earlier, but you'll also be able to get it when we have the handout as well, unless you want to add the subscribe in there too, Glenda. But yeah, Laura, I saw your comment about the use of a presenter using auto captions in PowerPoint steals the option of turning it off for anyone who finds it distracting. And this is where I just want to highlight that sometimes one tool is not the only tool available. And so there are ways for people in live presentation situations to be able to use an auto caption tool that instead of it being displayed on the main display, it can be displayed somewhere just for that individual. And this is a great time to talk about the difference between open and closed captioning. And so, yes, captioning is an essential service, and we in no way are talking that that shouldn't be provided, but to provide it in a way that also understands the needs of some individuals with cognitive disabilities that can find seeing the scroll difficult to help them focus on content. So yeah, it was a great comment, Laura. I really appreciate that you shared that. So yeah, is there other questions, Laura, that have come in during the presentation?
Great, thank you. And I was placing that in there because I actually sat through a training virtual where they chose, and I actually was presented at a conference where they were encouraging everyone to present with PowerPoint auto captions. And I do a significant amount of training related, because I work with hearing loss, the difference between automated and human powered, and just all of the ins and outs of that. And so the chat actually lit up in that session of people saying, how can I turn these off? They're distracting to me, turn them off. And because the presenter had chosen to enable them in PowerPoint, that eliminated that ability for anyone to do that. I've only seen that once, so that's somewhat encouraging. We did have a question not in the Q&A, but in the chat, just rolling back up. Just give me a minute. Otherwise, if anyone else has any questions that they want to pop in the chat while I'm scrolling to find, that would be great. I believe it was from a David. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not finding it because we're below all of our. Okay, so David says, I run into problems with software that uses Python code on network systems. Do any of these tools use Python? So that was the first question. And then he had one other comment as well that I'll go ahead and just share as long as I've got it pulled up. Also shares that most of the folks I work with are comfortable with using smartphones. Is there any way to relate these skills to wider digital skills? And I feel that you did a fairly significant job of that. This comment was early on in the presentation.
I want to say that I want to pick up the smartphone. One of the things I think is fascinating is when we think about the content that we design on large web pages and the cognitive overload that can happen versus mobile. I love how clean, usually cleaner, a mobile design is. So I think it's a delightful tool, and these things actually do completely apply to that. Sometimes the real estate option, because we have so much less space on the mobile devices, that option of do I want words and pictures? It becomes even more important if only one or the other is available, and that real estate is so tight. If a person's preference really is one or the other, you need to let. So I think all of these things actually do apply in that mobile, and there's fascinating research that we've been doing, that the mobile devices are better than our desktops for a whole host of things.
The only thing I have to add to that, because Glenda, she's always got her finger on the pulse of all this stuff, so she is an excellent resource for these things, is when you think about if you have to make that choice on behalf of your users, image or text, the thing to think about as you're designing is that icon or image you're selecting may not be an icon your user is familiar with. And so as we move towards personalization, I encourage that individual to stay up on what they're talking about in terms of the individual being able to load in their own symbol set, for example. So if it's not your hamburger menu icon, it's the person's hamburger menu icon, that may just facilitate that much easier in the future. It's certainly not the reality today in terms of ease of bringing those things in, but it is a future that's coming, and so to start preparing for it.
And on the Python question, rarely do Jenny and I know what language something was written in. So if you're having specific problems with a specific application loading, I would suggest contacting your IT group and see if they can help you troubleshoot what that barrier is. As Jenny has shown me and reminded me that all of us don't have equal access to digital things, depending on the firewalls around us.
I think you're on mute there, Laura.
And this is Laura. We did have a question. I believe all of the links you've put in the chat are in this resources. The IT admin settings for our Zoom license frequently will not allow for copy paste in chat. So, and it can be hit or miss. So apparently today was the miss. So thanks for pointing that out.
If you click on the link, will it open it in a browser even?
I don't. No, it's not. I don't. Yeah, it's an IT admin. issue.
Yeah, there's an example of a firewall preventing us access.
Well, and we had a training.
Happens. It happens.
We had a training last week where we had individuals from Puerto Rico, and they were the presenters. And so we had to do a quick IT turnaround to allow Puerto Rico into our Zoom meetings. So
Awesome.
it's always something.
It is. It is.
Okay,
Well,
some
yes,
people
they
Genesis,
all-
some people are having some success and some are not. So who knows
Yeah.
which side of that firewall we're having issues.
But all the links should be included in the handouts. And Laura, I believe you said that you were going to share the handouts, correct?
Yes, yes. And I'm not sure if I see any other questions. So just to close out housekeeping, first of all, Glenda and Jennie, this has been fabulous. You went over and beyond what was in the session that I attended, since you had plenty of time. And reminder that a survey will go out to everyone. And we do ask you to take a few minutes to complete that. It's pretty short and painless. And we do use that for our federal reporting, which the Wistech program is our federal AT Act program. In there will also be an opportunity to indicate if you want the CRCs and CEUs, and then you'll answer a couple pop quiz questions related to the content today, and then verify that you did attend. Along with that will be a link to the handout, which will be through Google Drive. And aside from that, I really appreciate the time that the two of you spent sharing your vast amount of knowledge. And I keep the Minnesota's IT access page readily available in my bookmarks. So I reference and refer to them probably weekly, if not more often.
Thanks for the kind words, Laura. It's much appreciated.
We greatly enjoyed being here. Thank y'all.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.